What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. So today I would like to talk about an install commission that I completed for a customer on a Tierfon Orbital ScrapFlex. This particular scrap has the hybrid chassis that I designed for this install. So I have a number of these that are coming down the line. I was happy to start offering these as builds for people on my website. And typically what that looks like for me, the same with the null rev speeders that I do. I open up a couple of slots, and as they fill up, I start making the hilts. These in particular are significantly more time consuming than the null revs. There are a lot of vintage parts on these builds, so I have to do a lot of modifications and a lot of grinding and a lot of building and assembling. So these take a little bit longer than the null revs. But with that being said, as I complete one, I will open up another slot on the website for those who are interested, right? So anyhow, I do want to come into Fusion and talk about the chassis that is for this particular install. Like I said, this one has a hybrid premium chassis in it, right? So I do want to come into Fusion and talk about it. And then of course we will come up top. I'll talk a little bit about what goes into the assembly and builds in these as well. With this particular one, I have started adding some newer designed greeblies. So I do want to, we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So anyhow, and when we get all that out of the way, of course, we will put a blade in it and do a demo, right? So anyhow, with all that out of the way, let's come into Fusion. Okay, so here it is. This is the chassis that is done for the premium version, premium install, hybrid install. But this is essentially just an MJF nylon main body of the chassis itself. And then we've got some brass accents, right? So there is a brass battery cover as well as a brass board cover. And I also added just some simple brass vents, just to add some extra detailing, right? But other than that, pretty simple setup. So we will start at the bottom. This is a fully enclosed 28mm bass speaker. I do have some channels on each side of that to allow for my wire management, right? So I do have a kill switch that sits below the board. And to allow for that, I have to have enough room to bring my leads up. So I've got 2 leads for my power, 1 for the negative battery tab, and then 2 again for the speaker, right? So that is where those wires come up into the board area. On each side of the chassis, there is some light tube work and greebly work, okay? Around the front, we have a brass battery cover that has got some greebly work on it as well. These parts, the brass board and battery cover, are affixed to the body of the chassis with some neodymium magnets. These are rectangular neodymium magnets. I do like using bigger magnets so I don't have to pull my hair out with 2mm circular magnets, right? So I prefer to use bigger magnets when I can. It just makes things a heck of a lot easier. Around the other side is our where the Proffie board sits. This is a Proffie build, which, by the way, before I forget, I have started to offer these in a CFX configuration, right? So those who are interested, that has been updated on my website. This is a Proffie build, so the Proffie board does sit in this tray, and then, of course, we've got a cover that sits on top of the Proffie board. I do have a hole in this board cover, so you can get at that kill switch as you need to without taking the cover off, right? Some rectangular LEDs above the board on each side, blue and red. This is becoming somewhat of a signature for me, even though anybody is free to put rectangular LEDs on their chassis. But I've gotten away from putting neopixels all over chassis. It just, to me, this looks a little bit more elegant. Nothing wrong with 2020 neopixel strips, but I like putting these rectangular accents in my builds lately, okay? This stem or this nipple up here is where the chassis will marry up into the Graflex 2.0 blade holder. There is a set screw that helps this to stay in place, and I also have a bead of E6000 in there as well, just to help with some shock absorption as well as just to help it stay in place. And that, my friends, is that. Let's come up top. All right, so here we are. This is the Tierfon Orbital ScrapFlex. Essentially the same build that I do for all of them with some minor differences, right? So each one of these is handmade. And by handmade, I mean I just kind of assemble it with parts. The upper section, obviously, I don't make or machine any of the metal in this, but I do assemble them by hand. Okay, I don't have a lathe here. I just work with my hands. That's all I've got, right? So each one of these is a little bit different, right? So there are some differences between D-rings and greeblies, but for the most part, why is it that I can't keep a blade plug inside of a hilt? So there went that blade plug. And my dog is going to pick it up. Hold on, let me get that. So there's a blade plug right there. So anyway, as I was saying, essentially these are all the same with some minor differences, right? So I'm going to start at the top, at the bottom rather. This pommel is from the Custom Saber Shop. I do have a D-ring that has been attached to that pommel with some threaded hardware. All of this hardware is threaded. It is not JB welded in place. This greebly at the bottom here is a brass greebly, okay, that has been naturally, come on camera, it has been naturally weathered. Okay, so I've got some natural patina going on in that brass greebly, and that is also attached to the pommel with some hardware. Okay, this is just a regular copper ring that has also been weathered. All right, making our way further up, this is the quintessential Graflex or Graflite Cell holder. I use these in all of these builds. These are still relatively easy to find on eBay, right? So I like to use these in my builds. Okay, so I cut them to size where I like, where I like them, right? And then I use them in these builds. There are some random watch parts that have been added to this grip as well for some extra greebly work. Okay. Making our way up, we have a 2.0 converter, or a coupler rather. This is from the Custom Saber Shop. This is how I attach this grip section to the Graflex 2.0 section. So this is what allows this grip to be threadable, essentially, right? And then, of course, making our way up, we have a Graflex 2.0 blade holder that I've weathered a little bit. So I weather these to make them look a little bit rusty. So when these come to me, they're anodized. I strip back all of that anodization, and then I go back in and I start to weather this. The way that I get my rust for these parts, or this rust type of look, is once I strip down all of the anodization, right? So this is what they look like clean. This is what they look like clean, okay? So I go in and I strip back all of this paint and anodization, so I get a bare aluminum part. And then I go and I aluminum black that weathered, or that bare aluminum part again. So this is all equally black. Before I seal that aluminum black, I start to go in here with some burnt sienna wash. While that burnt sienna wash is still wet, I take a blowtorch to this. And I feel as though that gives it a relatively accurate rust look. It's probably hard to see this on camera. But I feel as though it gives a nice pitted, like rust look, right, for that Graflex 2.0 holder. Making our way up, this is a full replica Graflex upper section. I get these from the Graflex Shop, right? They sell them in one full assembly. So I get the red button in this, the bunny ears, the glass eye, all of the pins come with that kit. And then I chop it. So this has been chopped to allow for room to see those ribs. Okay. Then I go in and I weather the Graflex section. So this has been weathered a little bit. Put some gouges in the emitter. Okay. Another thing that I've done new with this build, and that will probably continue with the future ones, is this control box. So my original builds of this was this is a heat sink, a part of a heat sink from a 3D printer. I think it's a Creality or Ender 3D printer heat sink. But I have designed my own that already has that convex shape, so it marries up into this upper Graflex section. It looks right. And then I've got an indentation for my hardware. So that is how this is attached to the Graflex section, okay? This latch is also, I also designed my own latch, and all of this has been printed in steel. So these both are steel parts. Then around that is a brass, like, I don't know, beauty ring. It's affixed to this upper section as well. All right. Random watch parts here for greebly work. Here's our red button that has also been weathered. Okay, so you can disassemble these red buttons. They've got a lock nut on the inside of them. You take that out and you can weather these. These are usually either steel or chrome plated brass from the Graflex Shop. Right, so that has been weathered. Bunny ears, of course, have also been weathered. And that is it. And then the glass eye, I like putting this brass mesh inside of the glass eye. This glass eye has been heat stained as well. All right. So that's it. A lot goes into these. They're just time consuming, right? I'm doing these alongside my regular install commissions, and as well, I do have a day job. So getting to these, I kind of chip away at them, right? But I'm super, super happy with how they come out. Really happy with these new parts too. These work so much easier. So when I used to get these aluminum heat sinks, I had to like take a sanding drum to them and get that concave curve so it would sit flush with the upper Graflex section. Designing my own with that concave curve saves me so much time, right? So let's talk about the chassis. You can unthread this grip. Here is our chassis, okay? So battery cover has been weathered, board cover as well, that has been weathered. I do believe I have a battery in here, right? So spring side is your negative, all right? That is down towards the speaker. You want to take the flat part of your battery, put it down towards the speaker.
Something inside me has always been there.
So this was already on.
But now it's awake.
All right, right. This is already on, and then you just attach your battery cover with those magnets. I love using these bigger magnets. They're just a lot stronger, so everything kind of snaps into place. All right. So I'm going to leave the grip off so we can come down to the bottom camera and get a better look at this. All right, so here is that, a little bit of a closer look at that chassis. Here's our board cover. Same deal with neodymium magnets. Okay. And that is it, right? So I'll put my grip back on. We are good to go. So that red button is your main. That serves as your main button. I do appreciate that we get some minimal shine through in the grip from those LEDs. And then, of course, with this particular install, with that premium chassis, you do get to see it through those windows in that Graflite handle. All right. This side tactile button will serve as your aux.
I'll never join you.
Shine through in that glass eye. All right. Let's put a blade in it. Okay, so this is a 7/8 inch blade holder. Another thing that has been changed with this install that will carry on through the newer ScrapFlexes, Tierfon Scrapflexes, is this front screw will serve as your blade retention. So this upper Graflex section is held in place with this screw that is in the control box, right? So that is what holds this entire upper assembly in place. That way that frees up this screw to be utilized as your blade retention, right? So 7/8 inch blade. Let's put that, let me make sure this screw is loose. So rest your blade on those PCB pins. All right. And then you can tighten that front brass set screw. Okay. You are good to go. All right. Let's go through a couple fonts here.
That lightsaber was Luke's.
All right.
Going somewhere.
There's that glass eye again. This is what I love about Graflexes and that glass eye up front that shine through. All right, one more. All right, and that is it. That is the Tierfon Scrapflex with a premium or hybrid Tierfon chassis, rather. So anyhow, to the customer, thank you very much for your patience on this one. This has been a couple of months in the making, so I always appreciate patient customers. Right? I say that time and time again, but I'm very grateful for that. If anyone has any questions about this particular build or the chassis, please do not be a stranger. Slots have now been reopened for all of these, as well as the CFX variant. So if anyone is interested, they can be found in the Tierfon Orbital original hilt section of my website. Right. So anyhow, with all of that out of the way, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.